This is literally take 4. It better fucking work. Hello, bonjour, здравствуйте, assalamu alaikum, guten tag, ni hao, konnichiwa, hola, a big hello and warm welcome to the Knitters Party podcast. ورمضان كريم لكل شخص اللي يحتفل. I'm Megan. I'm coming to you from Cairo, Egypt, where I live with my husband currently, and sort of get to knit my way through Egyptian cotton and all the lovely things. So this is a knitting podcast, but today I've got a little bit of crochet to share with you, as well as some stories about my time in Egypt. We've been here for 4.5 months, a little over, and we've been living abroad for 2 years, and so I'm sort of gonna give a little wrap up at the end of the episode, sort of sharing my experiences with life abroad. Sorry, I'm moving a chair here. It's not me, I swear. I'll be sharing my experiences about just sort of my life and giving some updates about, you know, my time in Egypt. Currently, it is the holy month of Ramadan, where Muslims fast during the daylight hours. No eating, no drinking, no smoking cigarettes, no having sex, nothing during daylight hours. And then in the evenings, usually people get together, they feast, they break the fast with a meal called iftar, which is often a big celebration and a wonderful gathering of family and friends. And so I've gotten a chance to share a little bit with that. This episode, we will have knitting, finished objects, and works in progress. After all of that, I'll let you know, and then I will be doing sort of this recap on life in Egypt. So let's get into it, shall we? My first finished object is this beautiful shawlette itself. This is the Meant to Be shawl by Kate McGraw. And the yarn is knit in Knit Picks Capra DK. It is a DK weight, 85% merino wool, 15% cashmere yarn, and this is the colorway Regal. It's showing up pretty perfect on screen. A beautiful, like, boysenberry, like, notes of like grape jelly. Oh, it's just such a beautiful color. And this shawl is for my mother-in-law. And I think it's gonna be perfect for like the summer office where it's over air conditioned, you just need a little something to throw around the shoulders, but nothing too much. And I think that this is really going to be that. A little bit about the pattern. This was not the easiest pattern to follow, and that is because, not because the pattern is hard in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it uses the same sorts of knits, purls, short rows, yarn overs. It does take quite a few techniques, but they're all easy, right? The problem is in the way the pattern is written. This pattern was definitely written in Excel as opposed to on Word, like a Word document. And so it sort of has these like bars, row 1, do this, then do this, then do this, and it's very disjointed. But the reason for that, which I understand where the designer is coming from, is because there's really like 3 sections to the shawl. So the first section is this beautiful diamond lace border at the bottom, which is sort of just a lace knitting pattern, but you cannot memorize it. And so it comes with a chart, but it also has written instructions. Fine. Then you have this section of netting, which basically goes up through about 1/3 of the shawl. So you have the lace panel down here, you've got the mesh netting, and then you have the this sort of stockinette stitch border, which at a certain point is knit in short rows. So you're following essentially 3 different patterns at any given time. You're following the pattern for the lace at the bottom, you're following the pattern for this stockinette, and then you're following the pattern for the lace mesh at the top here. So it's sort of complex, and I just feel like the designer could have done something different to make it a better pattern. Whatever, I'm probably just nitpicking. But overall, the final shawl is really beautiful. It also has this nice little diamond pattern in the center of the back of the shawl, and it looks very nice. It's just beautiful, drapey, the color is gorgeous, good choice. This is for my mother-in-law, like I mentioned. I think she's a couple episodes behind. I know she watches the podcast, but she's a couple episodes behind. I hope she doesn't actually see this until she comes to visit us in Egypt. So this is for her, and I hope that she really loves it. A little bit about the pattern. If you watched my last episode, you'll hear this again. basically, I'm living in Egypt, but I'm American. So when I went to go purchase this pattern on Ravelry, PayPal basically said, oh, hey there, suspicious activity, like, we need to confirm your account. So they messaged me and said, we need to confirm that this is you. Please verify by text message that you received this. Can you confirm this is still your phone number? And it was my American number. I was like, oh, well, I've changed my number. Here's my Egyptian number. They're like, we can't accept this because it's not an American number. So long story short, I ended up having to call PayPal. I had to explain to them that I'm living in Egypt, but I want to use my American debit card, literally, for a $6 knitting pattern, and they would not let me do it. I think actually it's a problem with Ravelry rather than PayPal, because I was able to log in on my account, I was able to sort of do all these things, except when I went from Ravelry to PayPal, like this third party sort of communications that they had was really getting in the way. And so I couldn't buy it. So I was bitching about it to my friends, and my very lovely friends over at the Dogstar Makecast and Dogstar Knits. They're a yarn dyeing company. So Jake and Ray very generously purchased this pattern for me and gifted it to me in Ravelry. So thank you so much. I couldn't have knit this without you guys. It turned out really beautifully, even if the pattern itself maybe wasn't worth $6. But I definitely appreciate you guys doing that, and I'm going to be bringing them something back from Egypt, I hope. Once I come back, I'm gonna be bringing a couple of gifts for some people, and maybe for some viewers. We'll see how much like how much room I have in my luggage, like how much Egyptian cotton yarn can I carry back to the States, and how much will they let me bring in? Let's see. Okay, that was my first finished object. For my next finished object, I have a beautiful hat. This is the Mochi Fair Isle hat by Sunny Scrivener, and it is exactly what it says on the tin, a beautiful colorwork hat. This is a gigantic hat. You are not seeing it incorrectly. Somehow it turned out really big, even though I knit this on two sizes smaller than what the pattern called for. Let's get into it. This is the design, and this is knit with Malabrigo Rios, which is a 100%, I don't know if it's superwash, 100% wool yarn, 100% merino wool in the colorways Sunset and Archangel. I purchased these in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, maybe less than a year ago at this point, and I knew that I wanted to work with them because they're just so beautiful together, right? And you're probably going like, but Megan, you live in Egypt. Why do you need a worsted weight colorwork hat? And then the others are like, but Megan, you live in San Diego. Why do you need a worsted weight colorwork hat? And I'm like, but I'm crazy. And I just had to have these two yarns because they're so beautiful together. And they're basically my favorite colors. Like literally look at my yarn right here. I've got like orange and boysenberry and red and like more red back here. These are my favorite colors, guys. I had to pick them up. They were together at the yarn store, and so I was like, okay, I'll buy it, whatever. So not only because I loved it, but also because I've got family in Canada as well as family in Michigan, so I definitely go to cold places for holidays and just to spend time. So anytime between fall and early spring, I can use a colorwork hat, so I'm not worried about it. Yeah, so a little bit more. This at the bottom is a corrugated ribbing, and corrugated ribbing just means it's like colorwork knitting. Basically means you do 2 knit in one color, 2 purl in another color, knitting in one color, purling in another color. And what that does is it creates a rib, quote unquote, but it doesn't scrunch in like a ribbing should, or like you might want a ribbing to do in a hat or in a cuff to your socks or something like that. And so this lays flat, which is sort of nice because it doesn't pucker in or anything, but at the same time it's not super duper snug against my head. I'm not going to try it on because I've got my hair up in one of those little bun things that are impossible to do, and so I'm just not going to put it on. But it does look great. It's actually quite slouchy as well. And initially I thought I was going to use more yarn than I did, and so I thought that I would make a gigantic pom-pom to go with it. But this is the yarn that I've got left, and I did wind this cake a bit tighter than I wound this one, but I still think I have quite a bit of yarn left over. I'm thinking I'm gonna make some matching colorwork mittens of some sort. So I haven't chosen a pattern just yet, but I will be looking out for colorwork mittens to match my beautiful colorwork hat. Okay, a little bit more about the color work. I was sort of going back and forth between knitting with two colors on my right hand basically and like throwing the yarn, and then the other way I would do it is with one color in my left hand, one color in my right hand, and sort of alternate picking with one and then continental knitting in the other. I didn't find either method particularly fast or particularly good or better than the other, and so I really just switched between them. I was a bit worried that my tension would be off, but actually my tension is pretty good all throughout. So this is the inside of the hat. You can see my floats. Normally when I've got floats or any sort of color work, I usually have like one big loop where I've clearly forgotten to pull the extra yarn to make it a little tighter. But for this, it actually looks quite even all the way around. And so you actually can't tell, because I would do maybe 8 rows of two-handed color work, and then I would go to, you know, 6 or 7 rows of one-handed color work, but just throwing. I did find two-handed color work a bit faster, but it wasn't natural for me, and I was worried about my tension. But overall, it actually looks pretty great. So I'm quite happy with the finished result anyway. This was my first colorwork project in a while. I think it'll be my last colorwork project for a while, after I do my mittens, of course. Colorwork's just not my favorite. What can you do? So that's it for my finished objects. I do have a couple of works in progress for you today, and I will start with one. You didn't really see this exact one last time, but whatever. I'm working on designing a shawl, and I'm designing a V-shaped shawl, not a triangle shawl, but a V-shaped shawl that is going to be a lightweight, sort of summery V-shaped shawl. And the idea of a V-shaped shawl is like a triangle shawl, where it gives you the point at the bottom and the points on the sides. I love that look. The pointiness is absolutely beautiful. The symmetry is perfect. Everybody loves a triangle shawl. What I don't love about a triangle shawl is that you do all this work and then it scrunches up around your neck and you can't see anything for like the first half of the shawl because it's all just scrunched around your neck. And maybe if you live in a very cold weather place, all that extra fabric right around here keeps you nice and warm. But if you're knitting for the summer, or if you're in a warm weather location, the idea of having this huge chunky shawl right around your neck is actually like quite stifling. And so I've come up with the proportions and with the mathematics and everything for a V-shaped shawl. So basically it will sort of come down to a point in the middle and then come straight up into a V. So it will not be straight across the back, it will be V-shaped. So that ideally it comes around your neck and it drapes around and has nice long edges, but you don't get the bulk around the neck. And so I was working really hard to try and figure out all the mathematics for it, and I think I finally got it. And last week I was working on one with all these eyelets and it was very complex, and I realized that the pattern was just going to be written in a way that I didn't like, and I had just come off of knitting that meant to be shawl where the pattern was poorly written, and I hadn't figured out a better way to write a complex pattern, and so I was like, screw it, I'm going to start from scratch. And so I just decided to sort of cast on the same mathematics, the same sort of design, but in garter stitch with some basic eyelets. And so this is going to be what I will call my Veni Vidi Vici shawl. Sort of a play on words there. You've got the Latin Veni Vidi Vici, which is obviously foreign languages are just something I do, even though it's a dead language. Latin will never die, really. But it also sort of goes to show about the V-shaped shawl, which I really appreciate. I'm going to basically just have garter stitch with a couple rows of eyelets. I'm about halfway through right now, and you can't, The problem is I'm working on this on, I think, a 32-inch cable. Like, it might even be a 24-inch cable, so trying to wrap this around my neck and be like, voila, look at my beautiful shawl. It's not gonna happen. But when it's actually blocked out, I'm expecting that, all right, so if this is the center of the shawl, which it is, I'm expecting it will come sort of straight up like, oh no, I just dropped a bunch of stitches. Oh, clumsy, clumsy, clumsy. I gotta be careful. If this is the center of my shawl, I want it to come up the angle is not going to show properly. I really want it to come like a V. I want it to be this shape, not triangle shawl where the top of the shawl is flat, but I really want the top of the shawl to come up like this, right around the neck, frame the face, frame the neck, and be beautiful. I feel like I'm voguing right now, like, come on, Vogue. It is Pride Month, right? So we gotta like, give it up. Give it up to everybody there. Anyway, so yeah, I'm really excited about this design. I will be asking for test knitters very soon. So if you are interested in possibly test knitting a quite simple garter stitch with a few eyelet rows shawl, possibly with tassels, I might add the pattern so that if you have extra yarn, you can add tassels if you want, but you might not, it's not going to be a mandatory or like an important feature of this. But if you're interested in test knitting, please let me know. I'm going to put a link to my Ravelry group below where you can sign up for that test knit. It will be within a week or two of when this is published. I really want this to be out while it's still summertime and still sort of hot. I think this is going to be a super fast knit because you're increasing in the middle to give the V shape, of course. You're increasing in the middle to get sort of the V, and you're increasing on the sides, but you're increasing more than a single stitch on either side. So in most triangle shawls, it's one stitch on the sides and one stitch in the middle to give you this sort of perfectly like triangular shawl. Mine is just different proportions, and so it grows really quickly. The numbers grow really fast, but it means that it knits up very quickly, and I actually think it's going to be quite a fast knit. It is designed for 100 grams of fingering weight yarn. So if you have that special skein of yarn that you don't really know what to do with, but you don't want to make a heavy something or put it in a fade, or you don't want it to get lost, you can definitely turn it into sort of a Veni Vidi Vici shawl quite easily. That's what it's made for. 100 grams of, mine's knit in cotton, but you could use wool, you could use obviously anything you want. But I really want it to be a nice special pattern for something like that. I also think this is a nice modesty shawl, especially me living in the Middle East right now. If I have a shirt that is sort of low cut, more so than what I would normally feel comfortable going out in, I would love to just wrap a little lightweight shawl around me, not have to worry about the bulk of a hand knit shawl or anything like that. I'm rambling again. I told myself I wouldn't ramble. But here I am, rambling. That's it for my Veni Vidi Vici. If you're interested in test knitting, I will put a link to my Ravelry group below. Please join in. Test knitting just means that you would test sort of the unfinished pattern. So I'd want you to give me feedback. What do you like about it? What do you don't like about it? If there's any mistakes, certainly in the pattern. And then at the end of the process, you would basically receive the completed finished pattern for free. And so I will be charging for this pattern on Ravelry, maybe like $2 once it's actually uploaded. But if you are a test knitter, you get the pattern for free while you do it the first time, and then when it's completely finished, I'll send you the updated pattern, completely tech edited with pictures and all the correct information as well. So you'd be really doing me a help, and you'd be getting a beautiful shawl pattern out of it. Cool. All right, that's enough about my shawl. Let me tell you about my last work in progress here, and it is something that last podcast, I'd mentioned that I purchased a couple of little balls of crochet cotton, and this is a lace weight 100% Egyptian cotton crochet thread, and I said that I was going to be knitting doilies. Well, as much as I said that I would be knitting doilies, plural, I have started a doily, and I don't know if I'm ever going to make another doily because these things are ridiculous. Oh, this is it. Okay, I'll try to sort of show down here. This is the Moon Petals doily by Julia Hart. It is a free pattern on Ravelry, but it shouldn't be because this is actually quite an intricate pattern. And this is a doily. I am about 60% through. I'm on row 15 of 23, so this thing is gonna be like gigantic, like easily the size of my like wingspan, my shoulder span here. Which I am not a small person. I thought doilies were gonna be like dainty and little and coasters and maybe like the size of a placemat, but this thing is huge. It is not completed, like I mentioned, but these are all going to be like little pineapple edges, little pineapple design, and I'm really excited for it to be finished. My biggest problem with this is just that I cannot crochet and do anything else. This is seriously a project that requires 100% of my attention. I can't listen to music while I do this. I certainly can't watch TV while I do this, or else I will make a mistake. And I think part of it is just how crochet is. If you are used to knitting, you know that it's like, oh, K5, P10, yarn over. Knit 5, purl 10, yarn over. But with crochet, because you've got stitches that you can go into, you've got the space between stitches that you go into, and you've got all the different stitches that you could make, it actually is quite complex. Readjust there. So it's actually quite complex. And so the pattern is like, oh, you know, crochet, single crochet into the next chain 3 space, and then double crochet on top of the next double crochet, and repeat this until you get to the end of this, and then do this and that. It's like written out like a novel, and it is so complicated. I know that this is what crochet is like, but when I saw doilies, I just thought they were effortlessly dainty. And this takes a lot of effort. This is not at all effortless. So if you've ever knit a doily, please leave a comment below about how naive I was, about how simple doilies look and how beautiful and effortless they look, and how clearly people put a lot of effort into making these doilies. So that's that. It is beautiful, and I think it will need aggressive blocking once it's done, because right now there's a lot of like, it's just not taut. It really needs to be like drawn out so that all the spaces are as wide as they can be, and that sort of everything is visually making an impact. Because right now it's sort of crumpled and it's unwashed. It's unfinished. But that doily is not the easiest work in progress that I could be doing. So I'm sort of jaded a little bit on working on doilies. I think I'll still save this yarn for doilies in the future, but maybe I'll see if I can make smaller coasters or sort of like practice doilies. I think I had big plans to make like a set of 6 placemats or something, but clearly that's not gonna happen. Especially not when all I want to be knitting are like dishcloths. I don't even know. I just want all the cotton yarn because that's who I am. And right now this doily is just not making it for me. So that's it. Short for the knitting content today. I'm so sorry. It has been summer and I have not felt like knitting at all. Especially here in Egypt, it's been like, the temperature has been in the upper 30s, which for us like Imperial Americans, it means like upper 90s. It's so hot. I don't want to be knitting, and I've sort of been just doing other stuff. So I guess that's where the knitting content ends. If this is where I say goodbye to you, goodbye. Otherwise, you're welcome to stick around, and I'm going to give sort of an update on my life here in Egypt. Like I said, we've been here for 4.5 months so far, and I haven't talked a lot about it, mainly because I feel like I haven't done so much. Daily life takes over. You know, like life is life, whether you're in America or in Egypt or wherever you may be. I mean, you still have to work, you still get up and cook and do dishes and chores and walk around, and it's not like, it doesn't seem like exciting things are happening, even though maybe to the outsider my life might seem really interesting. To me, my life is so mundane. So I'll start first with my job. I have been teaching English as a second language to Egyptian students now for 5 months. This is my 5th month of teaching, 5th or 4th. Anyway, I've been teaching for about 4 or 5 months, and this is my first real teaching job. When we lived in London, I went to school to become a certified English teacher so that I could teach English abroad, and that's always been my industry in America. I've worked in various English as a second language school for international students, working specifically with students from around the world, helping them learn English while they're here. Some students continue on to go to university in the States. Some students just return back to their countries and speak English while they're there. Students have a million different reasons for learning English, but it's always been an industry that I've been interested in. Especially being a linguist myself, the idea of working with students learning a second language is always really cool. So in the States, I have worked as admin for about 6 years, doing different roles, but always in administration. And I always had friends who were teachers, and it seemed like they really had everything, that they were the ones impacting students, that they really had this important role in student development and in helping students learn. And I just was always really jealous of my friends that they were teachers. So flash forward, we moved to Egypt, we moved to London, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get certified to teach English as a second language so that when we go back to Egypt, which we are currently living in, that I can teach English. So I started working in February at a really wonderful school in Cairo called Reach Out Academy. They are a wonderful nonprofit NGO, actually. They're a nonprofit school teaching Egyptians different languages. So not only do they teach English, but they teach French, German, Spanish, and Russian. And of course, they have Arabic classes for any foreigners that may be living in Egypt. I've been teaching English. My first month, I thought I was really good. But I was a little rocky. And so my second month, I got more classes and I started getting better. I started refining my technique. My third month, I started getting really confident and my students started really enjoying me. And so now that I'm in my fourth or my fifth month teaching, somehow I feel like I've hit my stride. I really feel like I'm learning a lot more and that I'm actually providing a higher quality education compared to my first month teaching. And I think my students are noticing a difference because the most important thing and the best thing really for me as a teacher is when I'm just telling my students about their coming up exam, their level test basically. So the classes here are 1 month long. So 1 month courses, you take a level test and you get to level up if you pass. And so I'm telling my students just information about the exam, how to prepare, what they should study. And they're like, okay, but teacher, like, what if we want you as our teacher for next month? Like, how do I get you as my teacher again? And I was just like, oh, my heart is melting. Like, oh, like, if you want me as your teacher, you can just talk to the front desk. They'll help you out. Like, they'll, you know, just ask them if you want me as your teacher. And then I was like, if you don't want me as your teacher, that's okay. Don't worry about it. But, you know, if you do want me, just talk to the front desk and they'll be able to help you out. And so I've had a lot more requests from students who want to continue studying with me, which is really great for me because, you know, the higher reviews that I get and the more a student likes me, I think that means the more they're learning, and I can really see their development. I can hear changes in their speech patterns. I'm literally watching them learn, and it's so cool. It's really awesome. That said, I sort of expected going into teaching that I would be like, okay, I'm gonna hit this bell. It's going to be the right thing for me, and that this is gonna be my passion, and I'm gonna know what I want to do for the rest of my life, and it's going to be teaching. And so I've been teaching for like 5 months now, and I haven't really hit that bell. I haven't felt like, oh, this is the career for me. This is what I could do for the rest of my life. This is the end all be all for what my professional goals should be. And so I'm sort of conflicted a little bit, thinking like, okay, I'm having fun teaching right now, but is this really what I want to do? Is this really something that I could do theoretically as a career for the rest of my, you know, for at least a long-term project, maybe 10, 15 years? And especially not to mention, in America, teaching English is exclusively part-time work. They don't really have full-time English teacher jobs, and so that means no 401k, that means no health benefits. That means that my employer isn't going to really be invested in my professional development, and it also means once you're an English teacher, there's no growth. It's not like there's English teacher management or English teacher higher salary. It's like, no, you teach, you teach. It's a standard salary. It's a standard career. It's like, this is what you do, and that's sort of everything that you do. So I'm really conflicted because I'm enjoying teaching, but I still don't know if this is what I want to do, quote unquote, for the rest of my life. I'd really love to teach Arabic. That would be my passion, but I think that's my passion. Like, I would love to try it and see if that works, but there's no Arabic instruction jobs in San Diego, at least. There are certain places that are looking for Arabic language instructors, for example, military academies in the US or private colleges, things like that, but I'm really not interested in working for this particular administration's government, so I wouldn't want to work training soldiers to, for example, go to war with the Middle East, because I personally don't agree with the wars that have been fought in the Middle East, you know? I would love to work at a college, but I am certainly not qualified. I don't have a master's or a PhD in Arabic language or linguistics or teaching. I am not qualified to teach at a university level. And so I leave for myself sort of Arabic teaching to high schoolers. That would be my ideal career if I could ever do it. But what schools do you know of that teach Arabic? You know, like, the problem is our schools are currently teaching Spanish, French, maybe German or Japanese if you've got a really progressive or a large school. But the languages that our high schools should be teaching and getting students interested in are critical languages. Languages like Russian, Arabic, Farsi, Chinese, languages of future communications that are going to be important for both economics, for national security, for business. I mean, there's so much that someone can do with a second language that goes beyond language education. Just because that's what my passion is doesn't mean that's where I originally started, you know? And so anyway, I feel like I've hit this wall where I want to be teaching, I'm having fun teaching, but I know that I can't make it a viable career in America. I can't teach English for 40 hours a week with benefits. And that's sort of what I'm hitting a wall with. And so I'm having fun, but part of me feels like I'm almost wasting my time doing this. But then I look at my students and I see that they're improving and that they're having fun and joking and laughing in English and playing with language. And it sort of makes it all worthwhile, at least for the interim. It makes it worthwhile that I'm doing something that helps students, and I really appreciate that. So that's one experience in Egypt. Moving on, I want to talk a little bit about Ramadan, because Ramadan, if you are unaware, is sort of this holy month of fasting that all Muslims must complete. It's one of the pillars of Islam, actually. There's 5 pillars of Islam, one of them which are sort of required by the religion in order to sort of fulfill religious duties. And one of these pillars is fasting during the month of Ramadan. And so Ramadan began, I think, 2.5 weeks ago, maybe 3.5 weeks ago now. It's almost over, my gosh. But during this time, Muslims do not eat, drink, smoke cigarettes, have sex. They don't do anything sort of like this during the day. From sun up to sundown, they fast. Then at sundown, and specifically right at sundown, they break their fast with a meal called iftar. And iftar here is... it can be anything from a humble meal with your family to a huge celebration that you share with your family and friends, making lots of food, feasting with this celebratory attitude and the celebration of breaking the fast. And so every night during Ramadan, people do these iftars, and it's seen as a really beautiful and celebratory month. So sure, during the days you're fasting, it's hot, especially in the summer, it's really hot in a lot of Muslim nations. You're not eating, you're not drinking, you're sort of sacrificing a lot of yourself for your religion, and then at night you get to celebrate and break the fast, and it is just it's a really interesting feeling that the whole country takes on. So Egypt is currently 90% Muslim, and so most of the businesses are closed during the days. Restaurants either have very limited hours or are completely closed before iftar. And it's interesting, to say the least. As someone who doesn't fast and who's not Muslim myself, wanting to go to lunch and not finding an open restaurant is sort of frustrating for me. But then I realized that 90% of the people in Egypt right now are fasting. Like, it makes sense in their culture, and so that's just one little thing. But I have attended 2 iftars during this month of Ramadan. The first one was at a private home for just someone that we know who is sort of like directing the studies with a lot of these American students. And this was really wonderful because we got a home-cooked meal, homemade iftar, and it was just a really nice celebration, and we got to spend a few hours with them just talking and laughing, and people brought like musical instruments. So one guy was playing the flute, another guy was playing the drums, they're singing, there's just celebrating, and it's a really beautiful time. So the second iftar we went to was more of a formal event, including a couple like American embassy personnel and some people from the research center here in Egypt, and that was a little bit more formal. It was catered and the food was delicious, but it was just a good time to chat and to laugh and to have fun. And so that's been really nice, sort of experiencing real Egyptian culture since I've been here. Most of the people that I know are either my husband's friends who are American, fellow teachers who are also American and or native English speakers. So from the UK, there's a cool guy from Fiji. Hey guy, I don't think he watches. There's like, just all the people that I talk to in my life are American or Westerners. And so to sort of experience Egyptian culture has been really nice. So going to these iftars has been a fun little celebration, something like that. So that's good. A last little thing, well, a couple little things that I'm talking about. Next week, my friends from America are coming to visit us here in Egypt. I almost said here in San Diego, I wish. Our friends are coming to Egypt to take some vacation, and we're going to show them around. So we've got a couple days lined up in Cairo, where of course we will visit the pyramids. We're going to visit the Egyptian Museum. There's also some other really cool places that we're going to show them, like the Salah ad-Din Citadel, which is like a walled city, like a citadel, a walled city, including a couple of beautiful mosques. There's a couple of beautiful old historic churches that have a lot of ancient 1st and 2nd century AD paintings, religious paintings of Jesus and just religious paintings. Really beautiful stuff. And these, our friends are artists, so we really think that they'll be interested in something like that. We might get tattoos while we're here in Cairo. And then we're going to Luxor. And Luxor is a city in Upper Egypt, which is a misnomer because it's actually lower. It's so Egypt is broken into Upper and Lower Egypt, and this is based on where the Nile is. And the Nile River is the only river in the northern hemisphere that flows south to north, interestingly enough. And so they call Upper Egypt where the Nile starts, which is in the south of Egypt, and then the Nile flows north to go to Lower Egypt, or where sort of the Nile finishes up here in Alexandria in the north. So Luxor is a city in Upper Egypt, which is very far south of Cairo. And this is home of all those famous Egyptian things that you've seen. The Karnak Temple, the Temple of Karnak, the Valley of the Kings and Queens. They have Queen Hatshepsut's museum and sort of a mummification museum. We're going to be going on a hot air balloon ride at sunrise over the Valley of the Kings. What? I am so excited for this stuff. Like, these are the things that I wanted to do when I came to Egypt, you know? I've been to Egypt now. I've entered Egypt probably 5 times in my life. I've lived here 3 times, been here for vacation, had to leave and come out. I've entered Egypt a bunch, lived here 3 times, and this is probably the last time I'm going to be living in Egypt in my life, and so I really wanted to maximize my time being here. And so I was like, gotta go to Luxor. I've lived in Alexandria, lived in Cairo, I work in Giza. We've been to Sharm el-Sheikh, which is sort of this beachy town resort that I went to with my parents a couple months ago. And so Luxor is this last key to Egypt. And I am so freaking excited. And my friends are coming, which obviously that's amazing. These friends, specifically her, I've known her, she was my neighbor when we were growing up. So we've known each other since we were like old enough to talk, like 3 years old, and we've been like best friends ever since. We haven't missed any important things in each other's lives, and it is so cool that this friend decided to come visit us. She's bringing her boyfriend, who's also awesome, and so we're just all gonna have a really great time, and I just know that it's gonna be fun, so I am so stoked for that. Cool. The last little thing that I wanted to update on is sort of my job search in San Diego. Initially, my husband and I had planned to both return to San Diego, or both return to the US on September 15th. We have plane tickets to return to Detroit, Michigan, which is where my family lives, on September 15th. The problem is that my husband is required to go back to his university, University of California, San Diego, to start the fall semester, which begins September 25th. So we arrived to the US on September 15th. We have to be in San Diego on the 25th, and we have to drive all of our stuff from Michigan to San Diego, find an apartment, etc., before he has to start teaching on the 25th. So we were talking about that, and we were like, this is too close of a timeline, like 10 days to pack everything up, load up our car, and drive across the country and find an apartment and get all of our stuff out of storage. It's not gonna happen. So we sort of started thinking about, well, what if I went home a little bit early, was able to, you know, get our things to San Diego, find an apartment, sort of unload the car, unload our storage unit a little bit, so that when Paul comes to San Diego, he can just start working and he doesn't have to worry about like a 10-day window being in the US in which to complete all this work. So the more we thought about it, we were like, okay, well, how about this? I'm just gonna start searching for jobs in San Diego, and then once I find the perfect job, once I get hired and everything, then I'll just leave Egypt early, go to San Diego, and sort of do all this stuff, but with a job, you know? And so that's where I'm at right now, and I started a job search just a couple days ago. I'm not too worried about a timeline because realistically, today is the 8th of June. I have until officially September 15th to leave Egypt, and so I have like 3 months to sort of secure a job and then rebook my tickets to go back to the States. So I'm definitely looking for the right job. the problem is, what is that? Going back to my first point here, I'm like, well, I can't teach English because that doesn't pay the bills. I am good at sales, but I don't like sales. I've been working in English schools, but they may or may not be hiring, and the schools I want to work for, I've already worked for like 3 or 4 different English schools in San Diego. I'm sort of exhausting my options because I don't want to go back to several employers that I previously had. All the other people that I know aren't really hiring, and so I'm sort of like in this job search mode, and I haven't really had to job search for about 2 years, and this is like stressing me out, man. So if you're working in the ESL school industry in San Diego, give me a call. I'd love to work with you. But I also need something that's going to pay the bills, you know? So I am looking for jobs actively. I would love to return to my former employer, which was actually University of California, San Diego. They've got a really great English school. I worked as a health and welfare advisor with them before. They're super great, but you know, we'll see sort of how the cards play out. I'm definitely not going to jinx myself by putting out any information or sort of letting you know what jobs I've applied for. I really feel like that's just bad juju into the world. But just know that I'm looking for jobs and trying to do this from Egypt, but it's hard because on a job application, it's like, oh, what's your address? So I give them my parents' permanent address in Michigan, but I'm not living there. And so then they ask for my phone number, and I'm like, well, if you're gonna call me about a job, you might as well call my Egyptian number. So I give them that, and I'm like, I'm not gonna find a job. Like my address says Michigan, my phone number is Egypt, my cover letter says, sure, just hire me. I just need 6 weeks of time before actually starting this job so that I can like leave the country I'm in, pack up, move to California, find an apartment, unpack my storage unit before I start working with you. Like, I sort of feel like I'm sabotaging myself just by all the requirements that I have. But what can you do? You know, like, I don't want to go back to San Diego without a job lined up. That would be stupid. And I don't have the money to just go buy an apartment. Like, they have income requirements. Like, I have to show like my salary information and everything before you can rent an apartment. It's real strict out there. So I'm just trying to find my way in life, you know? Oh, I feel like we're all on this path, and we've got a million different forks in the road that you can take. And I'm optimistic about all of them. I think this is a great opportunity for me to actually have the time to search for the right job instead of any old job. But at this point, I'm thinking, well, is it better to make an American wage in a job I don't love and then try to find something different and change from there? But that's like not fair to my employer. Or is it better to stay in Egypt making no money, or I'm making an Egyptian salary? My salary for teaching is like $300 a month. It's not much. And so, like, you know, I'm not making enough money to stay. It's not worth my while to stay here. But then, like, what would I be doing in the States? So I'm sort of just really conflicted right now. I've got a lot going on, and it's a little overwhelming, to be honest. Not to mention the fact that there's culture shock. Not to mention the fact that I sprained my ankle walking about a month ago because the streets in Egypt are very uneven, and there's tiles missing. And so if you're just walking along and you're not looking, you will just tumble. And I've sprained my ankle. This is like my curse. I've sprained my ankle in like every foreign country I've visited for the most part. Sprained my ankle in Tanzania and Kenya. I sprained my ankle in Alexandria, Egypt, in Cairo. I'm pretty sure I sprained my ankle in London. I've definitely sprained and broken my ankle in the States. I like have weak ankles apparently, and Egypt doesn't help that. But I've got a little culture shock, I'm not gonna lie. You know, I don't love having to speak Arabic all the time. I really wish I could just speak English all the time and whatever. And I don't love that the restaurants are closed down during Ramadan. How dare they? You know, I don't love all these little things. And so the idea of going back to the States and getting a job is really tempting. But I don't want to live with my mom and dad. I love my parents, but man, we lived with them for 5 months. I'm not interested to live with mom and dad again. I'm a grown adult. I need my own space. I need to pay my own bills. I am not living with mom and dad anymore. So that's it. Okay, I got it all out. Thanks for listening. If you've made it this far, thank you for sticking with me. I think that's all I'm gonna say for now. Cool. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you guys again in a couple of weeks, maybe about 3 weeks. Like I said, my friends are coming into town, and we're gonna spend, they're here for like 9 days, 8 days, 9 days. So it'll definitely be at least 2 weeks, if not 3 weeks before my next podcast. But I hope you enjoyed today's episode and some updates on my life. and I hope you guys are doing okay too. So Ramadan Mubarak to everyone, and you know, happy Eid if you are watching this after Ramadan has ended, and I wish you all a really wonderful day and a happy knitting. So take care, guys. Bye.